Well, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Dan Wilton, CEO of First Mining Gold, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Darren Cook, who's joining us all the way from Australia, West Australia, and it's about 4 in the morning there, Darren. So I first of all want to say thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So listen, we appreciate all of you joining us today on this webinar. One of the things that struck us is that we've been talking to a bunch of our shareholders about the great work that our partners at Auteco have been doing at the Pickle Crow project, and we just passed a real milestone for our partnership over the course of the last couple of weeks, where Auteco finished the first phase, which was $5 million of spend in the first stage of the earn-in. And it struck us that a lot of our shareholders, by virtue of Auteco being an Australian company, don't get the same visibility of the great work that our partners are doing on the Pickle Crow project. So we thought one way we could help rectify that is let's get together so they can tell the story for themselves, because we would never do it justice to the amazing work that Darren and the team are doing on the project at Pickle Crow. So very much appreciate you joining us today. I think for a format here, Darren will walk through a bit of an update on Pickle Crow and talk a bit about Auteco, the path forward, and sort of what their work programs are moving forward through the year. Lots of exciting results to come. Just a reminder that we have the Q&A up in the panel on the right there, so you can ask any questions, and I think we'll go through the presentation, then have a good question and answer session after that. So without much further ado, Darren, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Well, look, I'd just like to start off by saying thank you to the First Mining team, because it's been fantastic to work with the guys. I think what we're creating here with this partnership with Pickle Crow is really a win-win situation for both sets of shareholders. It enables the First Mining team to really focus on Springpole, which, looking through the study that's just been released, is an absolutely fantastic project, and just like to congratulate the guys on that, because we know how much effort and work goes into releasing those studies, and to have such a great project with the potential for 300,000 ounces per annum is huge. As a byproduct, we at Auteco have been advancing the Pickle Crow project in partnership, and the support that we've had from the First Mining team, including a lot of the technical background and just access to some of their experience in the Canadian scene, has been second to none. So it really is a true partnership between our two companies, and we're excited to see that grow, and we're excited to see where that goes into the future. So we're very excited with the results of Pickle Crow. It's been just over a year now since we've formalised the joint venture agreement, and we've been very, very busy, as you'll see from this presentation. All right, so just in terms of Auteco and who we are, I'll start out by giving a bit of an introduction on the company and the overview. And look, we're basically an Australian junior mining company. Our market capitalisation at the moment is around $141 million Australian, which is roughly the same in Canadian and dollars. And one of the things that we're very fortunate to have is a very strong cash backing. So we've got nearly $30 million in the bank as at the end of December. And that really has enabled us to fast track the development of the Pickle Crow asset through the drill bit. So we've had 3 and 4 drill rigs on site. At the moment, we have 5 rigs turning at Pickle Crow. So we're pretty excited, and just to let all the shareholders know, there will be some results coming out in due course, and we're very encouraged to see how that's coming together at the moment. In terms of the capital structure and the company itself, there's a couple of things that really stand out in this that really make it very, very interesting to us. Firstly, the board and management have 22% of this company, so you can rest assured that there's a lot of skin in the game, and people really want to see this succeed, and there's a lot of ownership from the management team. One of the other things that's pretty unusual over here for an institute or a company of our size is the number of institutional investors that we have. So we have 26% institutional investment on our register, and that's from both Australian and North American and European groups. So for a junior explorer like this, we're very excited to have such a solid register behind us. The board and management of this team, in my view, has a very good blend of experience to move this project forward. There's a very good balance of both technical experience and financial experience. And really, to make a mining company thrive, you need both. Our executive chairman, Ray Shorrocks, and a couple of our non-executive directors, Steve Parsons and Michael Naylor, may not be familiar with this company in Canada, a company called Bellevue Gold, but they've done a fantastic job taking a very historic gold field in Australia. It had been shut down since the 1990s, investing in drilling, discovering a whole heap of more gold around that deposit. Yep. Just dropped out. All right. So look, back to that. Sorry about the technical difficulties. It must be because it's 4 a.m. here in Australia. Internet goes a bit slower overnight. But the executive group that we have involved in this is very successful and very well known in Australia through that company, Bellevue. They've taken a company that went from very small, cent sort of share price up to a market capitalization of over $800 million. So, pretty excited by that. Myself, I'm a geologist by background. I've had 24 years experience in the mining industry, and the majority of that has been in gold, mostly in Australia and North America, and worked for a mixture of big and small companies. I've been geology manager for Kalgoorlie District for Barrick Gold, worked for Newmont, and also more recently a company called Northern Star, which has really in recent years become a global major. It's a top 10 producer with most of the assets here in Australia, but also a mine in Alaska. So with Auteco, we want to focus primarily on gold in North America. And a lot of the questions that we get quite often is, you're an Australian company, why would you operate in North America? And the reality is there's a couple of reasons for that. We really love the jurisdiction. It's very stable. Ontario is a fantastic place to do business, and we're excited by that. We also see a lot of potential in the Canadian gold deposits. There's a lot of opportunity over there. The market here in Australia is very overheated at the moment in terms of the competition for projects, and the market is very, very buoyant. And we see really an opportunity in Canada to grow and also bring a different way to look at these deposits. My experience in North America is that although quite often we speak the same language, in a mining sense, there are some subtle cultural differences. And I think the way we look at things are slightly different. So I think it's great to tackle a deposit like Pickle with a fresh set of eyes and see how we can unlock potential based on some of our experiences and precedents that we've done over here. As a company, we have very strong core values. The people, the safety, the social license are paramount to success. We won't succeed without that. And we're very, very pleased with the relationship that we're building with the local First Nations people around Pickle Crow. Great bunch of people. And, we look forward to working with them and bringing benefits to those communities. The company will grow organically, and that's what we'll talk about today, which is the actual Pickle Crow deposit itself. But we also will be looking at other opportunities in North America on the inorganic side of things. We'll only grow if it makes sense and if it's value accretive. You can see that we've already done some small transactions since we've been involved with Pickle Crow. and we've added a lot of ground to the project. And one of the things that really does excite us about it is the regional exploration potential, which is why we've gone out and added that ground. And this summer, as everything starts to thaw out, we will be turning a lot of our attention to that regional exploration potential. And in coming slides, we'll be able to show you some of the results that we have from the historic data and some of the reasons why we are so excited about that regional exploration potential. So just in terms of our partnership, since we've been involved with First Mining, it's been a whirlwind 12 months. Like, it's hard to believe that the joint venture agreement only completed on the 13th of March 2020. So bearing in mind that we've only been involved in this for just over a year now, nearly 13 months, it's been very, very busy year, and you can see what's been achieved in that period of time. From a corporate point of view, we're very lucky that our executive chairman and the team raised money at very good times for us. So, it doesn't matter if you've got the best team in the world. It doesn't matter if you've got the best project in the world. If you don't have funding to make it happen, you're not going to deliver results. So the fact that the guys have put us in such a strong position allows us geologists to do our job and deliver the results. So, once we got our feet under the desk there, and as I said in the introduction, it was very good to hear the interactions with the First Mining team and then pass on the experience, because it is truly a case that if we're successful, they're successful. So it's been great to see. But we did a lot of work on the exploration targeting side of things to work out where we should go. It's a great deposit, and there's so many targets there. I could spend a year and a half drilling. I could spend $100 million testing all the exploration targets, but we needed to strategize and really focus on the way we were going to unlock the potential at Pickle Crow. So we spent a bit of time working on that. And then in May, we commenced our 5,000 metre drilling program. On the back of some of those results and the historic data, we released a maiden JORC resource. Obviously, those stocks on the Canadian market have to be NI 43-101 compliant, and on the Australian Stock Exchange, we're regulated by the JORC code. So we went back and recalculated the resource that was JORC compliant, and in June put out a maiden JORC resource of 830,000 ounces at 11.6 grams, and the grade is fantastic. With further work and some more results and some further interpretation, by the 1st of September, we had that up to 1 million ounces at 11.3 grams per tonne, and that is spectacular. To have a resource of that size and at that grade is very, very rare, globally, not just in tier 1 jurisdictions, but globally. We've released a series of drill results. You can see there in September, November, and January. And as I mentioned before, there are more coming. The key thing to note about all of those drill results are that they are outside of that million-ounce resource. So this is all extensions. This is all new veins, new structures that we've discovered very close to the old workings. So that's been fantastic. And we've recently added another 176 kilometres of the Pickle Lake Greenstone Belt to the portfolio of the project. So very excited with how things have gone, and we expect the next year to be just as busy and hopefully just as successful as well. All right, so look, what I'll do is I'll just give you a snapshot of the Pickle Crow asset itself. I know a lot of people in the Canadian market may be familiar with Pickle Crow. A lot of these slides we put a fair bit of detail into because it is relatively unknown over here in Australia. But the key thing is that Pickle Crow is one of the highest grade Canadian historical gold mines that has ever been mined in Canada. It produced 1.5 million ounces between 1935 and 1966 at a huge grade of 16.1 grams per tonne, and that was all through shafts, rail and cart, shrink stoping, and the typical mining methods of the day. But to mine a deposit, to actually produce at 16 grams per tonne is absolutely fantastic. Location-wise, 400 kilometres north of Thunder Bay, very easily accessible 365 days a year by road and by air. mentioned the historic production before, and the resource that we have now, the million ounces at 11.3 grams per tonne, the million ounces. So, look, absolutely fantastic. You've got a deposit with a really strong track record of delivering high grade. The regional tenement holdings that we have are nearly 500 square kilometres now, of which 106 of those are patented mining claims. And we also have security of tenure on some of those mining claims. There's a portion of those claims that we have till 2067. So great location and a great history, and we intend to build on that history. When I was looking at the project and considering, what really makes Pickle Crow stand out, there was two things that really stood out to me in terms of what separates Pickle Crow from other advanced exploration plays globally. Obviously, the grade that I've already spoken about, but the other thing that really impresses me is the infrastructure that we have inherited on this project. And it's not that the infrastructure is perfect for where we see this deposit ending up. It is that it can give us a head start or a free kick in terms of eventually developing this project. For example, the main area that we work in, there's 3 main shafts, 2 of which are 900 metres deep. So there's 38 kilometres of lateral development. So should we want to re-access the underground area, we won't have to sink a new shaft. We would look at the options of rehabilitating what's there now and recycling the capital development. And, it can save us literally hundreds of millions of dollars should we be successful with the drill bit to bring this back into production. We also inherited a small processing plant that, believe it or not, has never actually been commissioned. So at the moment, it's only 225 tonnes per day, and that equates to about 80,000 tonnes per annum. So it's very, very small. But we have read some engineering reports that were historically done that there is capacity in the current infrastructure to increase that throughput. And what we're doing in the next quarter is engaging one of the engineering firms to go out there, have a look, and really give us a feel for how much it would cost to actually utilise that. And as I said before, if we are successful with the drill bit, I don't see 80,000 tonnes per annum being the end game. But the way I see it is it could be a way to bring forward cash flow. It could be a way to do bulk samples and just give us that start to bring this thing back to life. The other surface infrastructure there is impressive. It's got everything you'd expect from a relatively modern exploration camp, from core processing facilities, generations, accommodation. But one of the things that really is great from an ESG point of view is that in the district, it's all grid hydropower. So that's something that's really important to us. And in the future, where clean energy is more important, the fact that we will have access to hydropower is a massive, massive tick for us, in our opinion. From a geologist point of view, one of the greatest things that we've inherited through this is a 170-kilometre database of historic drilling. And I've looked at a lot of historic goldfields in Australia through the Golden Mile in Kalgoorlie and numerous others. And one of my favourite sayings is that there's usually ore bodies hiding in the database. And what I mean by that is in this historic data, quite often you find very good gold intersections that weren't adequately followed up, or people had a different interpretation of the geology. And quite often there's already ore bodies that have been found in there that you can get in and actually see. So, that gives us a huge head start. It enables us to be focused on where we send our drill rigs, and very excited to keep interrogating that data set. There's also a whole heap of underground level plans, and the quality of the geological mapping that was done in between the 1930s and the 1960s is second to none. It's all like an artwork, and I think a lot of young geologists today could learn a lot from the way that they were previously and the quality of work that was done geologically underground. So we're very lucky to have access to that. I said before that there was two things, and look, grade is king in my view, and of all the emerging exploration properties in tier 1 mining jurisdictions of North America and Australia, if you look at the emerging properties, which are just the ones that they've had the discovery, there's basic resources on them. You know, we rank them using the S&P Global data set, and you know, Pickle Crow actually has the second highest resource grade of all those emerging projects. So it does stand out, and you know, I think, you know, especially in environments where there are changing commodity prices, if you have either scale or grade, it really helps you get through those commodity cycles. And look, Pickle Crow, the grade makes this project very robust at, you know, almost any gold price. So the geology, I'll just give it an introduction to the geology, and I'll try and keep it very, very high level, which is sometimes difficult for me being a very passionate geologist. But at the end of the day, it was the geology that did attract us to this project itself. But the takeaway from this slide is that we're in probably some of the best real estate globally for looking for high-grade orogenic gold. So we're in the Uchi sub-province, which is very prolific. The endowment in that belt is well over 40 million ounces, and it hosts some great deposits. Obviously, Springpole is in the neighbouring Greenstone package, but you've also got the Red Lake district, and that's another Australian company that's recently entered the Canadian market in Evolution Mining. And I guess Red Lake doesn't need too much introduction. It's done over 25 million ounces at 20 grams per tonne gold. But we're also in the same province as Great Bear's Dixie discovery, and that looks like it's going to be sensational. No resources yet, but some of those drill intersections, and I saw they put out more in the last few days, are absolutely phenomenal. Reasonably good widths, but the grades are sensational. And also Pure Gold recently have got the Madsen project back into production, which has been great to see. So in terms of real estate, it does not get any better looking for gold anywhere globally. So we're pretty excited to be there. Geologically speaking, this is just a classic high-grade orogenic Archean gold vein system. So it is structurally controlled. It, you know, very familiar to us. For those that aren't overly familiar with Australian geology, here in Western Australia, we also have a lot of Archean rocks as well, and there's a particular area called the Yilgarn Craton, and the geology is strikingly similar to what you see over in Canada in the Superior Craton. So we have very similar host rocks in terms of being mafic volcanics, the occasional banded iron formation, a whole heap of volcanoclastic sediments, and feldspar porphyries intruded into that. And we also have conglomerates. And for those that know a little bit about Canadian geology, the Timiskaming type conglomerates are quite often associated with major deposits, and we're pretty excited that we do actually have conglomerates in the package here at Pickle Crow as well. So really good indicator that there's been some very deep-seated crustal structures and a lot of movement and a lot of rapid movement on those structures, which is always good for getting the fluids moving through the sequence. Structurally, the rocks are folded and faulted, and that's great because, you know, it's those structural complications that are actually localizing the gold. And because of the banded iron formations, the geophysics works very well to localize where these folds are. And from a metamorphism point of view, it's in the green schist facies for the most part, and that's pretty important in some respects for gold deposits. It's sort of like the Goldilocks theory, not too hot, not too cold, just right for gold deposits to form. So very good that we're in the right metamorphic terrain in this instance. So the mineralization is very simple in terms of the metallurgy and in terms of the way that it's constructed. So there's three main styles of mineralization at Pickle Crow deposit, and the first one and the main one that's been mined prolifically is the quartz vein reef system. So it is just a typical narrow, high-grade quartz scheelite sulfide vein. But the great thing is that it's got relatively low sulfide content within the veins themselves. Typically less than 3% in most of the veins that we see. But the gold is very coarse, And the key point from a processing point of view is that it is very, very much free milling. In fact, the mill that's out there at the moment is pretty much exclusively gravity and gravity recovery. And historically, the recoveries were in the very, very high 90s. So there is nothing metallurgically complex about this ore body. It is a very complex vein system. There's been over 30 quartz veins identified, but the orientations of these veins are relatively predictable. And for those of you geologists on the line, you'll have heard through your studies of the Rydell shear model for the fracturing of rock. And the Pickle Crow system appears to be very much a textbook version of that. And you can see in that image in the bottom right-hand side, the vein orientations that we see really do fit that model. So it's relatively predictable. From a mining perspective, these veins are quite steep dipping. So they typically dip at about 75 degrees. And where that's important is that should we be successful with the drill bit and get back underground, it's very much amenable to modern mining methods such as long hole stoping. So, geometrically and, from a mining point of view and from a processing point of view, what we've encountered in the mineralisation to date has been very favourable for a modern mining centre. So these veins can be laterally continuous. Some of them extend over strikes of 900 metres, and we have drilling at depth, greater than 1,500 metres that indicates that the veins continue and indicate that they still have gold in them. The other style of mineralisation that we have at Pickle Crow, and it's something in this particular deposit that's probably been overlooked a little bit, but we have gold hosted in banded iron formation. So basically, as the veins move through this sediment that is very rich in iron, which is what we call the banded iron, the fluids interact with those iron-rich minerals and they transform into sulfides. And sometimes in those sulfides, you have gold locked up within them. And when I say locked up, I don't mean refractory, but I mean like within the sulfide particles, but fairly easy to liberate. What that means is you've got the quartz vein, which we know is high grade, but you also get a halo of mineralization around it. And that's something that where we may see wider intersections at slightly lower grade, but still nonetheless bulk tons that may be very interesting down the track. So those styles of mineralization are the main styles that we see there. There's another one there which is lesser developed, but it's related to the porphyries that have been intruded. But we are really focusing on those first two styles of mineralization. Just in long section, you can see the scale of what we're dealing with here. And you see on this image here, the shafts are marked on there. The scale at the top is about 3.5 kilometres in length. And those pink dots are the drill intersections where the grades are greater than 15 grams per tonne. So you can see from this that there is scatterings of gold all over the place. Where our strategy has slightly differed from previous strategies is we really are focusing on looking for gold in the top 500 metres below surface. Some of the predecessor companies, even before first mining, were drilling 2,000 metre holes to demonstrate that the mineralisation and the structures continue beneath the old workings and go to the centre of the earth. And they were very successful in doing that. But given the nature of this particular type of ore body, where it is very nuggety, they would never be able to deliver reserves or resources from drilling from surface. So at those sort of depths. So what we're really focusing on is looking for new structures in the top 500 metres and looking for extensions to known structures. And the philosophy is that should we be successful doing that, we will then investigate the opportunities to dewater the shafts, rehabilitate, get back underground and drill it from underground. Because I think given the nature of this deposit and the sort of drill densities that you will need to get it into measured and indicated resource, the best way to achieve that will be from underground. And you can see on that diagram, there is actually historic levels that actually link or come close to linking some of those shafts. So the thought would be that once we find that enough of that near surface mineralization, we'll get back underground and rehabilitate those drives and use it for drill access to really assess the project from underground. So, and as with everything we do, we'd never just be thinking about it being a drill platform, but we'd be thinking one step ahead. Okay, if we are successful, how can we utilize this for extracting the ore body? So, we're pretty excited by that. So, look, the work to date, as I mentioned before, we could send ourselves bankrupt testing all the targets that I want to test. I see so many sensational drilling targets from an exploration geologist's perspective that we could spend a lot of money on it. But in order to be, to unlock the potential of this thing, we have to be very rigorous, and we've got a very strong strategic plan in how we're going to make this work. And that diagram that put together in the top right-hand side, you can see there's a very phased approach to the way we're working. We've delivered the resource update, and what we're working on at the moment is still drilling outside of the resource to extend it and really define the size of the prize. And one of the reasons that I think that's very important is that I've seen companies previously really jump to decision points too quickly in terms of how they're going to progress the project before they know what the ore body looks like. And it's very important to get the size of your infrastructure right. Otherwise, you can be destroying value down the track. So what we want to do is really define the size of prize that we're dealing with in this near mine environment. And we'll continue working on that over the next year or two. But in the short term, what we're going to do is reroute some of the rigs that we have on site to resource definition, with an aim to producing a new revised resource update as of the 30th of June this year. So mid-year, we will be recalculating the resource estimate. Concurrently with that, we want to send at least 2 of the drill rigs out to test the regional potential of the greater Pickle Crow camp, because I believe, based on the historic data, based on the structural data we've seen, even based on some of the geophysics that we've done recently, and I'll show you a little bit of that coming up, there are some very good drill targets there, and we're pretty excited. We think there's potential there for million-ounce discoveries. So very keen to get at least 2 of the drill rigs out regionally to test some of that potential. As I mentioned before, we currently have 5 rigs on site turning at the moment, and we've completed about 30,000 metres of the 45,000 metre drill campaign that we planned. You can see some of the results there that I mentioned earlier in the introduction, but 5.6 at 33.4, the 1.5 at 26, they're all outside of that million-ounce resource. So we do have an expectation that it will grow, and we're very, very excited about that potential in coming months. So just in terms of, I said I want to send at least 2 of the rigs out to do the regional testing. This is some of the information that we have in the historic database. And if there's one thing that we know about these shear-hosted orogenic gold deposits, it's that quite often there's multiple shears. There's not just one shear. And the core mine shear is the main one that hosts the Pickle Crow deposit, 1.5 million ounces. That's the pink structure on the diagram. And then the Central Patricia one, which was another 650,000 ounces. But there are other shears within this camp, and you can see them in the geophysics, you can see them in the ground mapping. And there has been a very limited amount of work done on those shears outside of the main core mine trend. And I often get asked the question, why is that the case? Firstly, for those of us who have worked in operations before, when you have an operating mine and a mill to feed, one of the things that normally happens in these operations is a lot of the drill budget gets directed towards the mine that's in place and finding gold to feed a hungry mill. And that often happens at the expense of regional exploration. The other, and probably the more critical point as to why a lot of these exploration results haven't been followed up, is because of the incoherent ownership pattern historically. From what we've seen from the historic maps, there was a patchwork quilt of different owners, and that really inhibits exploration. And one of the things that First Mining and the guys have done is really consolidated this Pickle Crow belt, and it's the first time that we believe that anyone's going to have access to this much of the northern part of the Pickle Lake Greenstone belt. to do a really systematic, detailed exploration campaign of the entire belt scale system. So it's been great that the team had previously been able to consolidate all those little owners that made up Pickle Crow. Now, in that database, I did mention before about ore bodies hiding in the database. There's a few select results there, and you can see them. There's a couple of things that really stand out to me about that. Firstly, that East Pat target, you can see there's 35.7 metres at 2.2 grams per tonne gold. And then you got the MacArthur target, it's 14.3 at 1.5. Now, the thing that stands out to me about that is those intersections are within 30 metres of surface. So one of the things that we're very keen to look at is the potential for near surface shallow open pit mineralisation in the Pickle Crow district. If that was in Western Australia, that would probably be an open pit by now. So we really do want to go back and have a look at the potential for open pits in this district, because it has always been considered a narrow vein, high grade underground system, but there may be the potential to extract value through open pit mining as well. Now, some of the hits that are deeper down on those shear structures show that there are very fertile quartz reefs well away from the main mine. There's one there you can see at the Springer shaft, 1.7 at 36.6 grams per tonne. And we are very, very keen to get a rig down there within the next 6 months. So that is probably one of the first targets that we will drill when we do swing the rigs out regionally. You can see there are other intersections there, such as F vein, the Powder House target, 3 metres at 11 grams per tonne, 119 metres down, with very limited follow-up is very exciting. And then in that trend between the western target, there's more than 2 kilometres of that core mine shear that only have 3 holes that have actually penetrated the structure. And one of those 3 holes had 0.3 of a metre at 70.9 grams per tonne. So we know it's fertile and we know there is potential for future discovery there. But the fact that you've got 2 kilometres of a major prolific structure that only has 3 drill holes through it is just phenomenal. And we think that once we start exploring and doing that systematic testing, the potential for future discoveries is very high. Now, if we step that out, we have a look at some of the work that we've done in the last 6 months. We've actually gone back and reacquired some of the geophysical data for the property. And this is an example. This is the ground magnetics that we've collected. And previously we had aeromagnetics for the district, but it was very, very coarse, if you like. And by doing the ground surveys, we're actually able to get a lot closer spacing. And what it shows up there very clearly, you can see in that diagram at the left, is that we can pick out the mineralized structures that are in the Pickle Crow area very clearly. So in the center of that left diagram, you can see that linear structure. That's the banded iron formation. And those red lines are where we know that the veins come through. But what you notice is where the veins go through the banded iron formation, you get a bit of a magnetic low in there. And what that is that's demagnetization. So as the fluids and as the structure moves in that area, it destroys some of the magnetic minerals and they show up. And when we've extended this program to the north of the old historic Crowshaw shaft, we're seeing very similar trends where we're getting offsets of the banded iron formation and we're seeing demagnetization. So they represent very strong targets for us to test, and we intend to expand that program out regionally in the next 6 to 12 months. So it's a very effective tool for us to use in the regional targeting. When we step out and have a look at the broader regional package, what you can see here is not only are these structures kilometre scale, they're actually tens of kilometres in scale, these shears that host the mineralisation. And what's really encouraging is we know that these shears are fertile a long way from the main Pickle Crow deposit. So, for example, there is a shear there, which is one of our higher priority targets. It's called the Tarp Lake Shear, and it's about 7 kilometres from the Pickle Crow mine. And some of the limited historic work that's been done on that has some sensational results. You can see there's you know, at the Metcalf target, there's 1.8 meters at 66.9 grams per ton, and that is just phenomenal. 1.8 meters at 28.5. So we want to get out there and test that. Another 5 kilometers further to the north, there's another 30 plus meter intersection at 1.5 grams of that lower grade BIF style mineralization. But in the deeper reef style, we still have 4.4 or 4.46 meters, sorry, at 7.2 grams per ton. So, those structures are fertile and they've had very limited work done. And when I say there's ore bodies hiding in the database, that is the reason why I think there is a very good prospectivity for making a major discovery out there. It's phenomenal that, the quality of those targets still remain relatively untested. So pretty excited to get out there. And then just the last point here on this particular slide is this deposit is very similar to one of the major deposits we see in Australia. And there's a deposit called Kundana, which has an endowment of greater than 9 million ounces. And it's the analogy that we use to describe it to people over here. Very similar deposit type, host rocks, structural architecture, and mineralization. So, the Pickle Crow style of deposit, even though it's on the other side of the world, is very similar to what we're used to dealing with in Australia. So we use that analogy to really explain to the Australian shareholders who have heard of Kundana why we're so excited about Pickle Crow. So look, just in summary, this is why we see Auteco as being a fairly compelling investment case. The location is great, and we couldn't work in a better jurisdiction. Like, Ontario is fantastic. We're in a prolific belt, and we're very happy with our joint venture partners. It's been an absolute pleasure working with First Mining to unlock the potential in this deposit. The asset has a very long history of delivering high-grade gold, as we've shown through this presentation. The upside is just exceptional, and I encourage you to go back and have a look at those results in a little bit more detail that were in the previous slides. But the fact that there's been very limited modern exploration and limited systematic camp scale exploration on this property is very exciting. And we're very well funded and have a pretty well balanced team. So that they're the benefits that we see of Auteco, and we really look forward to seeing how this unfolds over the next year and continuing to communicate with the First Mining shareholders. So thanks for the opportunity to present today, Dan. Really appreciate it.
Well, Darren, thanks for taking us through that. And I'm sure the rest of the folks on the webinar here as excited as I am. I mean, this is an asset that came into the fold in First Mining, like many of our assets did, at a time when people had given up on projects like these. Right. And so to a large degree, listen, we've seen it with Springpole, we've seen it with Goldlund, Cameron, Hope Brook, all of our kind of core projects. These were all of them with extensive infrastructure, with huge historic databases. But at the time, and we remember 2015, 2016, particularly over here, it was a miserable time where people couldn't raise capital. So we all owe a debt of gratitude to Keith Neumeyer and some of our team who had the foresight to try and pick these things up. And so I think it's just interesting and kind of tells the story that we were sitting a year ago, and it was actually more than a year ago that we got approached by by your team and Steve and Sam and kind of the broader Bellevue crew, who had been looking all over the world for where are those gold camps that had been overlooked. And so I guess one of the big questions that I have is, now that you and the team have been on the ground for a year, you're coming up with all kinds of great opportunities here, but why do you think Pickle Lake has been overlooked in a way that, Red Lake's seen an enormous amount of exploration?
Yeah, look, I think you touched on it before. I think things have been pretty tough in the Canadian market, really, to get capital to test some of these earlier stage projects. And it's something that we really haven't experienced in Australia. Like, we've been very fortunate to be in a very buoyant market for a long period of time and have access to capital. And, I also think we've seen a lot of examples in Australia where people have gone back into historic gold fields, reinvested with the drill bit, and made a lot of discoveries around the old historic mines. So I think it's a perception thing. Sometimes these things are seen as being a bit tired. It's mined out. But the way that we look at it is that no, if there's gold there, there's going to be more gold in the district to discover. So we're really keen to invest in the drill bit. Also, some of the ways we look at mining are a little bit different. As I said before, based on my experience with Northern Star in Alaska, we do speak the same language, but the mining cultures are slightly different. And I think the way that Australians look at things are in a slightly different light. Instead of looking at the risk, we're focusing on the opportunities and working out how we can overcome that risk. So that's where we see something like Pickle Crow as maybe having been overlooked because people would have just been looking at it as, narrow, it's mined out. The mineralisation continues, but it's 1,000 metres deep. And the way we look at it is, no, there will be more structures and more mineralisation in the top 500 metres. So
yeah, and I think that's been a phenomenally important change in perspective, right? And that's born out of the hard work that you and the team did digging through the data and like having a look at what was there even before we came into the partnership. And that's, that ability to kind of unlock a bunch of that value reasonably quickly. And one of the things that I would say, when we heard about, or we were thinking about what's the right path forward with Pickle Crow, one of the challenges was the people who had looked at it kind of said in the same way that you're saying, to do it any justice at all, you need a 20, 30 or $40 million drill program, because a lot of people are saying, well, it extends at depth. The shaft's there. You just got to, spend $20 million rehabbing the shaft and then try from underground. Like maybe, if you had unlimited capital, you could do that. But I think bringing the discovery perspective, and it's interesting. I think you see it in the Pickle Lake camp. I think we're seeing it in the Birch Uchi camp further over by Springpole, just kind of why we're starting to pick up some more ground around there. A lot of the stuff has just been overlooked, because it's hard, right? Yeah. It's a lot of hard work, and there's always been this perception of them being very narrow and small deposits, despite the fact that in Pickle Lake you had 2 gold mines that produced 2 million ounces of gold.
No, that's right. And look, we've got numerous examples of mines over here in Australia where they've very successfully mined deposits that are less than a metre wide. We see that at Northern Star's Millennium Mine, where they do a really great job of split firing, where they'll fire the ore and waste separately in order to high grade it. Yet they do it in such a way that the productivities are very high, so your unit mining cost is still relatively competitive. So there's some really good narrow vein mining expertise globally, and I think once people, particularly in Canada, cotton onto some of that global mining expertise that's out there, those deposits won't stay overlooked for much longer. And I think that's why you're seeing a flood of junior Australians starting to hit the market now. That's why you're seeing some of the major Australian companies come over to Canada, and I don't think it's going to be a secret for too much longer.
No, I suspect you're right. Listen, in a few of the questions here, there's a couple that are along the theme of you got 1 million ounces, you got a small plant, like, why don't you just bring it back into production? And what do you think a time frame for a potential production decision might be?
Yeah, well, look, we want to continue to really try and define the size of what we're dealing with, because, look, to make a truly modern mining property or a mining project, I'd like to see us have the capacity to produce at least 100,000 ounces per annum. And I would take the playbook, for example, that Pure Gold have used at Masden as something as the playbook to the way I see Pickle Crow eventually developing down the track. So although we've got that 1 million ounces, and we will build on that in the mid-year update, we really need to get in and infill drill it. What I would like to see to give us that confidence in the deposit is to get back underground and drill it from underground, because this style of deposit being so nuggety and narrow and with so many veins to test, you could almost send yourself bankrupt trying to do that from surface. And I think the most effective way to get it into a resource and a higher confidence category of resource will be from underground. So what I'd like to do is to get it into the measured and indicated from underground. But to answer the question about the mill, we are investigating potential to get that back off the ground. As I mentioned in the presentation, we are getting some of the engineering firms to assess it so they can give us a really good appreciation of how much capital would be required to get it back off the ground. Really keen to look at what the expansion opportunities are, because the reality is to get that 100,000 ounces per annum, 80,000 tonnes per annum isn't going to cut it. And especially if we look at some of that broader mineralisation in the district, the grades may be a little lower, and we would require more capacity. So I would be thinking that you wouldn't be looking at anything smaller than 500,000 tonnes per annum in a processing plant. So we really need to get the M&I firmed up before we commit to building a plant like that. But certainly would be really interested in fast tracking some of the, be it bulk sample or even looking at becoming a self-funding producer, explorer. So we could utilise that small plant to actually generate some cash flow to fund the further exploration and expansion opportunities that we have at Pickle Crow. So it's very early days. Bear in mind we've only been there for a year, and we're working on all those plans at the moment. The other thing that we have to bear in mind too is just we do have the government processes to follow. So currently we're permitted in the exploration phase, and we are working towards getting into that advanced exploration phase that will allow us to do the dewatering and a few other bits and pieces. But we do have processes that we need to follow, so that will dictate the time frame in certain respects.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the great things about Pickle Crow and where it is that you're in a historic mining camp, and you have a community, indigenous community, Mishkagogumang, not far, that has really deep experience in mining. And I know certainly I and we have really appreciated the approach that Marcus and the team have taken on site to being really proactive in that consultation and building that relationship with the community. We're working with Mishkagogumang at Springpole as well. And it's amazing when you get to understand the depth of the understanding of mining in that community, because there are a lot of people who have worked generations in the mines, be it up at Musselwhite, be it in Red Lake. It was always interesting when we could actually go to PDAC and get together. We had a lot of great sessions with kind of the technical and resource development group out of Mish, who again always really impressed us with the depth of understanding of mining.
Yeah. No, the relationship's been very positive to date, and like I said before, we really look forward to working with the Mishkagogumang moving forward.
Hey, you're doing well. It took me more than a year, I think, to learn how to actually pronounce Mishkagogumang. So, and I probably still am getting it wrong. So
it must be that thick Australian accent.
Oh, there you go. A couple other questions that have come in here. One of them is, and I think you've talked about this already, but with the 5 rigs on site, what's the footprint size with the overall drill targets? And if you kind of think about what's in the next stage of step out drilling, how many kilometers of strike do you hope to test over the course of the next year, let's say?
Yeah, look, it's a difficult question to answer in terms of how many kilometers you want to test, because there's multiple veins that are stacked on top of each other. So in some of the areas that we're drilling at the moment around the Shaft 3 area, we're testing 3 and 4 vein sets with one drill hole as we drill through it. So look, in terms of the step out, we're probably going to step out at least 500 to 600 meters. We're keeping it fairly tight at the moment because we are trying to build that inventory very close to the existing infrastructure, so that if we are successful, we can get back underground and exploit that quickly. So I would say we're probably really in the in-mine environment, hanging around within 500 meters of the infrastructure and the shaft. So we'll keep stepping out until the gold stops, but really focusing on that 500 meters.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I think what's equally as important as extending strike length, it's finding new structures, which you've been able to do. And we need to do a better job of making sure that our shareholders see all your drill results too, because like 5+ meters of 33 grams, those are some of the better underground. Some of the better underground results that we've seen anywhere in the past year. And that's in new structures that aren't already in the resource, right? I think that's very exciting.
No, that's right. And look, it takes time. Like one of the philosophies we have, because of the nature of this mineralization, is we'll drill for structure and then we'll work out where the high grade pods within that structure are. So that's part of the challenge we have. Like there's a lot of hits that we have that have identified the veining and identified the structure, but within that you have internal high grade shoots. So where we're coming back to now is really identifying where those higher grade shoots within it are. So yeah, look, there's fantastic results. There's more coming out. People are welcome to join up to our info line, and we do have a distribution list, and obviously all the results and everything will be on the First Mining website as we release.
Yeah, no, and we actually have had a little bit of a challenge, and it's a bit of a lost in translation 43101 versus JORC thing that we need to manage. And that's part of the reason why we haven't been able to be as vocal of cheerleaders as we would like to. Just a couple other things here, particularly for our shareholders who are just kind of asking for a bit of a reminder on what the balance of the earn-in agreement looks like, and I'll just jump into that. It's basically Auteco spent $5 million to earn into the 51%. So that's now been spent. And then on top of that, you're going for shareholder approval to issue us 100 million of your shares.
Correct.
And so that should be coming in the next, call it 6 weeks. That's just kind of running the process through there. So we'll end up with a total of 125 million Auteco shares, which we're very excited to be shareholders of. And then the next stage is another $5 million of spend over another 2 years, and a cash payment of $1 million to get to 70%, and then $3 million to buy that last 10% to get up to the 80%. And so if I had to, if we had to guess at the run rate of spend of 5 drill rigs turning, I don't know what that would be per month, but would it be up around $1 million a month?
Yeah, it's getting close. And look, we'd anticipate by the end of the year, or definitely very early next year, we will be in that position to get to the 70%, and then look at the extra 10% and get up to 80%. So, the key thing is we're so excited about this project that we actually had 3 years to reach the 51%, and we've done it in the first year.
Done it in the first year, yep.
So, and I mean, there's nothing worse than being in a joint venture where your partner does nothing. And I can guarantee to the First Mining shareholders that will not be the case with this joint venture.
Well, and part of that, we knew that we'd found the right partner out of the gates when on the back of really, on the back of some of the initial data compilation work, you and team, you and Ray and the team were able to raise, in excess of 30 million Aussie, I think 37 million Aussie, which gives us a lot of comfort of, the ability to spend and actually the ability to hit this properly, right? And we've been very, very appreciative and grateful for that, for sure.
Great.
All right. Well, we're kind of rounding the corner on an hour here. So there's one more question that I want to ask, because it's come up in a couple of different ways, but we won't hold you to it. But if you were to give out maybe not a target, but let's say an aspiration of the endowment on the total land package, 2 million, 3 million. Where do you think we get to? What's the goal over the next few year period here?
Are you trying to get me thrown into jail from the Australian Investment Security Commission?
Yeah, we won't hold you to any kind of JORC or 43101 requirement to this. Just, how do you think about it? How do you think about the prospectivity?
We wouldn't be here if we didn't see multi-million ounce potential. I think would be the most broad way to put it. We believe there's great potential in the actual in-mine district, but you have a look at those exploration results that are hiding in the database. That stuff that we've got in the district, and what's to say there isn't another Great Bear hiding there, another Dixie? Who knows? So I think with the regional exploration potential combined with what we've got in the immediate mine environment, I see multi-million ounce potential there.
Fantastic. And we're 100% aligned with you and the team continuing on the great work that you're doing, and very much appreciate you getting up at 4 a.m. to come and bring us all up to speed on that great work, Darren. I really want to say thank you on behalf of all of our shareholders and the ones who've joined. Again, make sure that if you want to be right up to speed, you can go to www.autecominerals.com.au. And get on the mailing list, and you'll make sure that you get the distributions as they come out. It's something that we're obviously going to keep talking about, and really appreciate the great work you're doing and the great partners that you are. So thanks very much, and I'm sure we'll chat again soon.